she blessed them with, while the legends of battle serve as a memorial reminding Athenians, lest they forget, of the barbaric past from which they had been freed. With the Parthenon, Pericles' vision to create a monument celebrating victory and revenge had been finally realized. In his biography of Pericles, Plutarch, the Greek historian, imagined the immediate impact of the whole Acropolis on its citizens.
The most wondrous thing of all was the speed of their work. For while it was thought that each one of these works would take many generations to reach an end, all of them were completed at the height of a single administration. For which reason the works of Pericles are to be particularly wondered at, being made in so short a time for all time. For in beauty each one immediately became ancient, yet it seems fresh and newly made even now.
But in reality, these glory days were short-lived. 20 years after their initiation, work on the Acropolis came to a halt. By 434 BC, civil war with the Spartans had intensified, and the Acropolis was never completely finished. These unfinished stones at the base of the Propylaea show where the work was dramatically curtailed. 5 years later, Pericles died of the plague that decimated the city's population. In 404 BC, Athens was finally crushed by the Spartan army. The Golden Age was over, and with it, the brief flowering of democracy. Athens would never achieve the same dominance again. When the Roman Empire annexed Greece, the Acropolis was preserved as a monument of human greatness. But with the advent of Christianity, the Parthenon was converted into a church. Many of the sculptures were defiled to erase the memory of its pagan past. In turn, the city fell to the Ottoman Empire. The Christian church was converted into a mosque, complete with minaret, and its statues were further defiled. The faces of the Erechtheian caryatids were sheared off, even though the Sultan used the building as his harem. Yet even after 1,000 years of cultural vandalism, the Acropolis remained largely intact. But by 1687 AD, the Ottomans were at war with the Venetians, who lay siege to Athens. The Ottoman commander stored his gunpowder within the supposed safety of the mosque, the Parthenon. On the 24th of September, the Venetian general, Francisco Morosini, turned his cannon onto the Parthenon. In a continuous artillery onslaught, lasting from noon until nightfall, the Parthenon suffered 800 direct hits. The inevitable happened. One shot penetrated the roof and ignited the gunpowder. In a split second, the Parthenon was damaged beyond repair. Over 300 years later, only the latest innovations in archaeology and restoration can grasp the miracles of design and masonry destroyed. Today, as never before, the work of restorers reveal those secrets. The damage from Venetian cannons would be compounded by 2 centuries of neglect and cultural looting. Some of the marble was even crushed to turn into cement. But at the turn of the 19th century, a revival of interest in classical architecture and ideals brought the Acropolis to cultural prominence once more. Aristocratic tourists from Northern Europe visited the site in increasing numbers and helped themselves to hundreds of carvings and marble fragments as souvenirs. In 1801, the Turks granted the British ambassador, Lord Elgin, permission to salvage artifacts from the site. Elgin took them at their word and set about the mass transportation of the Acropolis back to Britain. The pediment sculptures, cavalry friezes, and Battle of the Centaurs were the prize pieces of his collection. The transportation alone cost Lord Elgin £75,000, the equivalent of £3 million today. He hired an Italian landscape painter, Giovanni Battista Lucieri, to remove the sculptures for him. Lucieri's letters revealed the brutality underlying Lord Elgin's supposed rescue mission.
I should require 3 or 4 saws 20 foot in length to saw a great bas-relief that we could not transport unless we reduce its weight. Happily, it broke in the middle in a straight line at a place where there was no work.
Here on the ground we found some remains of the back of the sculptures from the area of the Zoophoros that Lord Elgin take from the monument. And here you can see how he cut the sculpture, a thick, not a very thick slab, due to the transportation, difficulties of the transportation of that period. So they used saw of this kind, pouring sand in the gap as they are moving, and they cut it both sides and they break it finally.
The damage caused by Lucieri has more recently been compounded by well-meaning but inexpert archaeologists. In 1902, restorers decided to replace the metal securing clamps that had survived for centuries. The 20th century replacements were supposed to be a preemptive protective measure, but in fact they corroded within decades, cracking the marble they were attempting to protect. This act of folly reveals the high quality of ancient metallurgy. The ancient clamps were the combination of 2 different strengths of iron, beaten together and then coated with lead to prevent corrosion, a level of artistry the restorers of 1902 had failed to match up to. Today, Nicholas Togonidis and his team are replacing the 20th century corroded clamps with titanium versions. These new clamps will not rust and have exactly the same breaking strain as the ancient Greek originals. When put under pressure by earth tremors, the clamps will break and not the marble. In another flawed restoration project, an archaeologist dismantled this column to repair its cracked surface. On completion, he replaced the drums in the wrong order, destroying their original beauty in the process. Such badly conducted restorations have forced today's archaeologists to evaluate every stone on the Acropolis site. More than 70,000 pieces of marble have been catalogued, and restorers now believe they know where each piece fits. And the more they understand about the Acropolis, the more the genius of its original builders is revealed. 1,000 nameless artisans who created this unique monument entirely by hand and without the use of mortar or cement. To preserve the buildings, restorers must match that precision